Make a copy of your the_images folder and name it the_text, since we're going to concentrate on text formatting this time around. To make things easier, we'll start with index.html and put our CSS in the head section. In the future, once we have this page looking good, we can extract the CSS and paste it into a styles.css file and link to it on each of the 3 pages. And like magic, they will all have the same formatting. So let's get some housekeeping going and set some defaults. Make a new line in the head section and create a style section for our CSS code. A common way to get started is to select the body by typing body and then a space and an opening curly bracket, pressing return, and then setting the font size to 100% by typing font-size: space 100%, semicolon. Since the body is the parent of almost everything on a page, setting this first ensures our design inherits the browser default font size, typically 16 pixels, but the user can change that. Then, all your sizes should be specified in relative units, such as em or rem, rather than pixels. Next, we'll change the font family to something other than Times New Roman. Notice VS Code lists a few font sets to choose from. I'll choose the one that starts with Arial. You can choose whatever looks nice to you, just make sure that the last entry in the font family choices is something generic, like sans serif or monospace if you want something crazy. If the font name is more than one word, it needs to be in quotes, single or double. Also, you put commas in between the different font names. If the user doesn't have the first font, the browser will choose the next in the list. So that's why we put our preferred one first and make sure to have a generic choice at the end. To make our headings stand out, you can change the font color. Surprisingly, this isn't called font-color. It's just color. It turns out that there used to be a font color, but that's been left behind or deprecated, as the linguistic nerds would say. Setting color changes the element's overall foreground color. Therefore, it shouldn't surprise you to learn that there is another property for changing the background color. It's called background-color. We'll get to that later. Just know that the color property is all you need to change a text's color. Start with a new selector for the H1 and type an opening curly bracket and press return. Type color: space, and notice that VS Code puts up a handy list for you. You can choose a color there or type in a 6-digit hex code. Why don't we choose one from the list for simplicity this time? I'll choose crimson. Just for fun, let's remove the closing curly bracket for the body selector. Notice that the H1 selector and a few other things change color. It's subtle, but that's telling you that something is wrong and your code probably won't render as you expect. So fix it. We'll put that closing curly bracket back. Since we want the other headings to be the same color, we can expand our selectors to include the H2 element. Put a comma after the H1 and type H2. Boom! Now all our headings are the same color. This is an important technique to keep in mind. If you want certain things to share formatting, it's a good idea to define it once rather than copy and paste the same code into other declaration blocks. A declaration block is all the text inside the curly brackets after the selector, where we set all our property value pairs. By the way, you should type a semicolon after each pair. You technically don't have to do it for the last one, but it's a good habit to get into to end all of them with a semicolon. After all, you might add more property value pairs later. Since we want our headings to be different sizes, we need to target them specifically. So code an H1 selector and start a new declaration block. This time, we'll set the font-size to 1.5 EM, making sure not to have a space between the number and the EM part. Likewise, we'll target the H2 and set a font size to 1.25 EM. If you want to apply special formatting to just one element of a web page, you can add an ID attribute to that tag. In our case, the H1. Remember that an ID should be only used for one thing on a page, just like you shouldn't share your driver's license with other people to buy beer. That ID belongs to you alone. So let's scroll down to the body of our index.html and add an ID of head1 to the H1 tag. Technically, we shouldn't have to do this since there should only be one H1 tag per page. So we could just target the H1 as a selector. But we'll do it this way for practice. Okay, now that our H1 has an ID, we can use that ID as a selector. To indicate that you want to select an ID, you put a hashtag in front of it. Sometimes the hashtag is called the number sign because it's used before numbers, I guess. Regardless, let's think of your driver's license again. It's got a number on it that uniquely identifies you. That's how you can remember to use the number sign for an ID selector in the CSS. Type hashtag head1 and then a space and an opening curly bracket. Press return and type text-shadow:. This property takes a few values to specify how you want the shadow to look. You can play around with them, but a good starting point is 0.1 EM for the horizontal offset, 0.1 EM for the vertical offset, 0.1 EM for the blur radius, and hashtag 888 semicolon for the color of the shadow. Let's see how that looks. Neat! To further distinguish this selector, let's add some letter spacing. Type letter-spacing: and then try different values. I'll set mine to 4px. Make sure to put a semicolon at the end. Now we'll finish it off by centering the selector with a text-align set to center. Notice that this also centers the image that's in the H1. It's a twofer. Technically, we aren't centering the H1, we're centering the things that are inside the H1. So let's say we want some extra spacing between the words of our second level headings that have more than one word in them. Since we don't need it for at least the first one on index.html, we can specify a class for this type of change. To type the same things in multiple places, you can press Alt or Option and click to set a second cursor. Go into the body section and set multiple cursors for the two twos of the H2 that have more than one word. Now type class =, quote, word space, one word, quote. To set a class selector, you type a period before the name of the class. I used to get the formatting for ID and class confused, but if you think of an ID as a driver's license number, you use the number sign. You can also remember the class from back when you were in high school. Back in those days, you had different classes at different times of day. We call those different class times periods. For instance, the first class of the day is first period. So class = period. See how easy it is? Go back into the CSS section and start a new line. Type period, word space, one word, space, opening curly bracket. Press return and type word-spacing:. You can experiment with different values. I'll set mine to 0.8 EM. Underlines under hyperlinks look old-fashioned, so let's get rid of them. We'll start a new selector by typing A space, opening curly bracket, and then pressing Enter to open up some space. The property we'll change is text-decoration: and we'll set it to none: To make all the links in our header nav black and bold, we need to target them directly. We can't just target all the anchor A tags, since we don't want that formatting every hyperlink in our pages. So we use a descendant selector. That sounds like a fancy name, but all it really means is that we specify that any A tag we want to format must also be the child of a nav element. To do that, we separate the parent and child elements with a space. Now we have a descendant selector. It's good to think about the simplest way to formulate these so you don't get too specific, but you're also not too general. A real pedantic person might say that this should actually be coded as nav ULLIA, but since there are no other anchor tags in our nav to worry about, we can get away with just specifying the bigger element first and then the smallest element in the bigger element we want to target. From a heraldry point of view, the A is the great-grandchild of the nav, not the child. From a Murray-Povich point of view, the nav is not the father. Once again, we'll set the font color using the color property and set the value to black. Likewise, we'll set the font -weight. You'll notice that as you set the font weight, the auto text has a list of numbers from 100 to 900. Those are different ways of specifying font weight, with 100 being lightweight and 900 being very, very heavy. Not all fonts have these variations, but you can play with this as a way of specifying font weight if you like. Web browsers are usually smart enough to substitute a font weight pretty close to what you want. Normal weight is 400 and bold is 700. Those are usually safe. And if you want something a little bolder, you can set it to a number higher than 700. Likewise, if you want a little lighter, set it below 400. In my case, I'll keep it simple by just choosing bold. Let's make the tiny text in the footer italic. We'll use another descendant selector for that. Footer space small, opening curly bracket. The property we want to change is font-style. We'll set it to italic. And that is it for selecting and changing some basic styles. Let's start a proper navigation system for our web pages by removing the bullets and stacking the LI elements horizontally rather than vertically. Set up a new selector by typing nav space LI space opening curly bracket and then pressing Enter. First, we'll remove the bullets. Type list-style-type: and set that to none: Since LIs are block elements, they stack vertically, but we can change that. Start a new line and type display: space inline-block: For good measure, we'll set the background color too. Start a new line and type background-color: and choose a light color. I'll go with antique white: We'll further refine this type of navigation in a future project, but for now, there are only two things to do before zipping your The Text folder and submitting the assignment. Upload your index.html page to validator.w3.org to check the HTML, and to jigsaw.w3.org to check the CSS. So do that now. Okay? No problems found, I hope. Good. I look forward to seeing your assignment.